because I'm not seeing. Okay, so this session will be recorded for everybody who might want to share this information with your colleagues and coworkers, but they weren't able to make it today. But it's a little after 9:30, so let's go ahead and get started. That way we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. Okay. So we'll do some quick introductions first. My name is Jamie Schechter. I'm a Homeless Services Chief with Health, Housing, and Homeless Services, Division of Contra Costa Health. We are co-facilitating this RFP with our colleagues at DCD, but I'll pass it to Shelby Ferguson to introduce herself first.
Thanks, Jamie. Good morning, everyone. I'm Shelby Ferguson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Continuum of Care Administrator at Health, Housing, and Homeless Services, or H3. And I'll pass it to Gabriel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gabriel Lemus. I'm the Assistant Deputy Director at the Department of Conservation and Development. Nice to see all of you here.
And you will probably see emails and the face of Cheryl Leonore. She is our Health Services Administrator with H3, but she is on vacation this week, so she won't be able to join today. On this intro slide, just to give folks a little bit of context, I added which funding sources within the RFP sits with which department. So H3 is overseeing the part of the Measure X Housing Fund, funding through AB 109, funding through Coordinated Entry, and funding through the Encampment Resolution Grant. DCD is overseeing a portion of the Measure X Housing Fund. And we'll get more into kind of the specifics of each funding source throughout the presentation. So just a little bit of background. This RFP is focused on funding from a variety of sources, as you saw, including Measure X. A proposal may be considered for other funding sources, so we really encourage you to put forward what it is you're hoping to achieve with the program, and we try and align that with the funding sources that are available the best we can. The RFP was informed by community input, so we did a lot of stakeholder input in 2022 when we did year one of the Measure X Housing Fund. And then we did a lot more over this past summer to really redesign the RFP a little bit and make it more clear, renamed it so that folks weren't just thinking, oh, it's Measure X and I don't qualify for that, so I shouldn't apply, but really just to give kind of overview of how broad this RFP opportunity is. And then we really built in and tried to clarify opportunities for smaller capacity building grants and the larger grants available to expand programming in Contra Costa. Some of the basics. So we launched the RFP on October 4th, last Friday, and deadline for applications is November 22nd, 2024 by 5 p.m. So we have about 7 weeks that this RFP is open, hopefully a long enough time period for folks to be able to put a lot of thought into their applications. We were able to recreate the process from the year one RFP that we put out, and applications this round will be accepted through Dropbox. Thanks to a lot of hard work from DCD, Public Works, our CAO, we are not using BidSync this round. So very excited to be able to make that change. There are 2 types of projects really, capacity building. And these are one-time non-renewable funds and homeless response programming. And these can be new projects, renewal projects, or expansion projects. For those small organizations, they can be coupled with capacity building requests. But those are basically the 2 broad buckets of projects in this RFP. Some of the priorities within the RFP are to demonstrate a housing connection. Over the past couple of years, we have seen a lot of really fantastic projects come through that are related, but not quite a pathway to housing. So we get projects that are related to food insecurity, transportation, all very valuable, important projects, but we've got very limited resources. And so we're really looking to use these dollars to have that connection to housing, direct connection. Priority number 2, strengthening the homelessness response system. We know that a lot of times state funding, federal funding, even private philanthropy dollars can fund 70%, 80%, 90% of what the actual need is. So if this is going to be able to help close gaps and really strengthen the network of service provision in the county, that'll be great. And we really want to be centering equity in this whole process and making sure that the needs of folks who are most marginalized are addressed through a lot of the programs that we're offering. Any questions before we move along? Great. So who are eligible applicants? Eligible applicants are 501c3 nonprofits in good standing, registered nonprofits in a fiscal sponsorship with a 501c3, religious organizations, and governmental entities like tribes or school districts or libraries. Those are all the eligible applicants available to apply or eligible to apply through this RFP. Residents of Contra Costa County must be the target population. So if your organization spans multiple counties, that's great, but the services need to be provided to Contra Costa residents. So, oh, one typo. Funding categories, please ignore that. Capacity building. These are those smaller non-renewable awards that we're seeking to make between $25,000 and $100,000. We are really not looking to establish contracts smaller than $25,000. It is a lot of work, as many of you know, to go through the county contracting process, so that can be a lot of squeeze for not a lot of juice. The goal is to build agency and program capacity of small and emerging organizations. And we're defining that this year because we know that caused some confusion in previous years. What is a small or emerging organization? So these are the characteristics we're really looking for. If your organization meets one or more of the following: you have an annual budget of less than $2 million. You have few or no paid staff, usually less than 10, but if you're an all-volunteer organization, that also qualifies you. And your agency originates from and are led by members of a historically marginalized population and are specifically designed to serve that population. So we're really hoping that this year, this gives a little bit more guidance to folks and creates more clarity. And the other funding category, homelessness response programming. This can be renewable depending on the funding source. So really encourage everybody to deep dive into the RFP materials to understand what funding sources might be one time, what might be renewable, and what it is that is expected of this category. These are housing related programs that preserve people in their housing. So it's serving folks who are at risk of losing their housing, or they provide a pathway to permanent housing for people currently experiencing homelessness. We're prioritizing sustaining high-performing services. So we heard in our stakeholder engagement that people need sustainable funding to be able to make their services consistent and deliver high-quality services to the folks that they're working with. And so we're really hoping to be able to keep sustainability as a focus in this RFP. This opportunity is a little bit more ideal for established agencies that have more robust infrastructure, especially if you're going for some of the more complicated funding sources that require some heavy reporting and compliance guidelines. And most programs that are funded through this category are expected to conform to the COC program models and performance standards. And so I think Shelby will be able to drop the link in the chat to those if you're unfamiliar, but it really spells out kind of how we expect rapid rehousing to be run, what rapid exit is, all of those kind of programs that we're looking for specific providers for. You'll be able to see what we mean by those categories. Within the Measure X Housing Fund, these are sort of the priority areas and the eligible activities. So tenant legal assistance, this is the focus of the set of funding from the Department of Conservation and Development. Case management and service navigation, basic needs assistance, emergency shelter operations and services, warming or drop-in centers, legal assistance, rental assistance or utility assistance, supportive services for individuals in housing programs, landlord recruitment and engagement, permanent housing programs, and programs serving transition-aged youth. Really want to call out that this is not the RFP to put forward proposals for the development and preservation of affordable housing. DCD runs a separate RFP or a NOFO process for those funds, and we can share that information with y'all, but this is not that RFP. So if you are developing or building a new building, don't spin your wheels trying to apply for this one. We wouldn't be able to fund you. Some other priority areas, AB 109, we're looking to fund some homelessness prevention and rapid exit, including direct financial assistance. And so this is the result of some additional one-time funds we received from the Community Advisory Board to allocate some excess AB 109 dollars. Coordinated entry, we are looking to fund our mobile access point services that are providing phone-based referral and linkage services. And encampment resolution funding. This is an award we've just found out literally 2 weeks ago that the county received. And so we are trying to really make sure we are being quick and responsive to this new set of funding and looking to fund rapid exit, rapid rehousing, and shallow subsidy services through this grant. This set of funding is a combo of new services in the county and services that we are required to renew through competitive procurement requirements. So if you're looking at it and going, I thought we already had a provider there. Yep, but it's just good practice to be competitively renewing and procuring our services on a regular basis. These are funding sources, as I said before, are all administered by H3. And pause again for questions if you have anything. Feel free to raise your hand, come off mute, or drop it in the chat. Okay, I'll keep us moving then. Okay. Oh, I even have a slide built in. Great. Okay, so now we're going to move on to completing the application. There are some pieces of the application that are required for everybody and some pieces that are not. So we'll go kind of section by section and I'll call out some of the details. So the cover page, this is required for all organization. It's going to capture basic organizational and project information. It's going to have the listed contact information for the person that we are going to be communicating with throughout the RFP process. So if that person is the executive director, great. If that email address is for a general kind of grants@organization.com email, that works too. Just know that whatever you put here is the contact info that we will be using to communicate updates around. In section 1, completing the application, this is also a section that will be required for all applicants. This will capture some more basic organizational information. It allows capacity building applicants to opt out of an interview component. So if you don't do anything with this section, or you check yes, great, or check no, or ignore it, that's fine. All capacity building applicants this year will be offered and assumed to want an interview with the review panel. If you do opt out though, if you're like, actually, I don't think we've got capacity to do this, or we think the application will stand, that's totally fine. Saying no to an interview will not negatively penalize your application. This section is primarily yes or no checkboxes, and you may need to upload additional documents to kind of substantiate the yeses or no that you're answering to. Section 2, this is another section that is required for all applicants. This is going to be capturing information like your organizational mission, your commitment to engaging people with lived experience, and your commitment to equity. It's going to require also an uploading of your supporting documents to illustrate your commitments. So we know that doing things like engaging people with lived experience can look a lot of different ways. So we want to make sure that y'all have the flexibility to demonstrate that however it is that your agency does this. Section 3. This is a section that is required for all applicants as well. And so this should provide a clear picture of the program, activity, or the service proposed. There's specific guidance for new projects, renewals, and expansions. So it'll be a little bit different if you've been providing services versus if you're trying to start something brand new. Section 3 has a 3-page limit per program applied for. So if your agency is only applying for Measure X funds, you've got a 3-page limit. But if you also want to apply for Measure X funds, AB 109 funds, coordinated entry funds, each of those program components, if they are different programs, can have up to a 3-page limit. So if you're proposing 3 different programs, you can do 9 pages total, but each component has that 3-page limit. That's a lot of math for me, and I am a contracts person, not a math person. So if that's confusing you, feel free to let me know, and I'm happy to try and reword it.
Is that 3 pages for all of the questions per program?
In section 3, yes.
But it's not 3 pages per question.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. So you can use those 3 pages however you want. If you really want to focus on a certain number of the questions within section 3, great. So however you want to organize yourself there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie, we've got a question in the chat about the page limits.
Okay, let me see if I can pop that open. Oh, okay.
Is 3 pages limit including the questions that are asked?
Yes. So the application template should be a little bit more concise. It won't have all the full text in there. So hopefully we're not taking up too much of your page limit, but that'll help us as reviewers and the panelists that we're working with to know how to be scoring things. Oh, I also see a couple questions that were directly messaged to me. Feel free to just put those in the public chat, folks, because it's hard for me to monitor both. AB 109 programs, is that only for reentry type programs? So yes, AB 109 works with folks who have engagement in the criminal legal system, and so that'll be the population of focus with that funding source. Another question I see is for an agency in good standing, do we need to upload our 501c3 certificate and business license? And should we provide our most recent audit also? I don't remember what we required in the RFP right off my head right now, but I would encourage folks to make sure you're reviewing the application template and the RFP, so all required attachments are in there. But that is a good practice to share those documents, of course. Okay, now we get to section 4. This is the section that is only required for new or expansion homelessness response programming projects. So this is the section where you will be confirming your alignment with the program models and making additional programmatic commitments like coordinated entry participation, HMIS participation, etc. This will require more detailed responses to administrative structure and organizational practices. And this is also a section where the narrative portion should not exceed 3 pages. So for capacity building projects, this is not required. And for renewal projects, for things that have already been kind of moving and grooving, this is not required unless you are proposing or requesting additional funding or proposing an expansion of some sort. Okay, for the budget. You will see that the RFP has an Excel document as an attachment, as an appendix. That is the budget document we are requesting folks use. What is required is there is one tab called the budget summary. That is required. This needs to have a narrative that'll have a description of how the funds will be used, and it will have a summary table of the requested fund of the funding requested through this RFP. It's always helpful for us as reviewers to know if you've got additional matching funds or leverage funds to be able to see the full scope of the program. So if you're like, well, my program has a gap and I'm requesting, 10% of that gap be addressed through this funding opportunity, it's really helpful for us to know what that other 90% making up the program is, so we can know, oh, is this realistic, or what's really the story behind this full budget request. The second part of that workbook is a optional budget detail worksheet. So we need some form of detailed budget, and you can use this. We find that helpful. It's easy for us to read, but if your agency does budgeting in a different way and you've got a way to detail it out, using your existing software or whatnot, that's fine. You can provide that instead. However, that detailed budget must match the budget summary. So I know a lot of folks have found it easier in the past to just use the full, both tabs on that workbook, but we have received also different forms of a detailed budget. They just need to match. Okay, and I'm seeing some questions. Okay, and Chantal, can the Measure X funds be used for those at risk of losing rapid funding to maintain housing? That could be an eligible expense. So if there are rapid rehousing programs that are looking to extend the runway of subsidized rent payments and you want to apply to this funding opportunity for that purpose, that could be eligible. Michelle, I see. Would AB 109 individuals be referred by ORJ, probation, or another county agency, or is it up to the homeless response organizations to determine if the clients are AB 109 eligible? Oh, thank you, Shelby. Probation and ORJ would be able to determine eligibility and refer. And Leslie, I see your question with respect to other funds. Those may not be confirmed in the future due to those competition processes. How should we handle these situations? Can you say a little bit more, Leslie?
Sure. I mean, for instance, Trinity Center, we get funding from a number of government and private sources that all roll into operating the care center,
Mhm.
but we have to go through annual requests or competitions for those funds.
Right.
So we don't know that we'll have them. We can make an educated guess that we will. So how should we handle that with respect to the budget in this application process?
I would say really examine the funding terms that are available in the exhibits and really dig into that to put together your budget for something like our coordinated entry dollars that are available. That is something I think you should prepare a one-year budget and demonstrate how that would be used in the budget template. And H3 works with applicants and awardees to really make sure they understand the terms and limitations of each funding source available. So we can prepare for future years of funding. And Gabriel, I saw you go off mute. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I think that's not unusual. That happens a lot with various competitions. We understand that what you're proposing is a budget. So if you do get awarded and the budget changes and that affects your program, that's something that will need to be discussed between whether it's DCD or H3. In most cases, it'll probably be H3 to go over how the contract would be put together, the scope of services that probably would impact how your scope of services will be moving forward for the fiscal year. I mean, worst case scenario is if you are impacted to a point where you're not able to provide those services, that's something that definitely would need to be discussed between the awarding agency and the nonprofit.
Terrific. Sounds good. Thank you both.
Yeah. Okay. So any other questions on the budget before we move on? Okay. Great. Right. Thanks for questions. Great. Okay, so submitting the application. Like I said, this will look really similar if you applied for the first year of Measure X funding. All these documents must be completed and uploaded prior to 5 p.m. on November 22nd, 2024 to a secure Dropbox site managed by our technical assistant provider, Focus Strategies. So the Focus Strategies is really helpful. They listed their email addresses in the RFP, and they have screenshots of how to do this with more detailed instructions. So if this is your first time using Dropbox, I really encourage you to test it out before 5 p.m. on November 22nd. Don't wait till the last minute because technology seems to have the sixth sense about when we're waiting till the last minute, and that's when it chooses to malfunction. Some additional opportunities for support. We will have applicant office hours on October 21st and November 4th from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. These are drop-in sessions. You do not have to be there for the full 2 hours, but as you're working through the RFP and your application, if you're having technical questions of, I don't quite understand what this question means, or I don't understand how to be using this budget template, feel free to drop in and we will be able to support with those. we will not be able to provide you guidance on the services you're proposing or anything that might influence the competition in a meaningful way like that. We are going to be remaining neutral in this process. So this is really the opportunity for technical assistance. I put the link in there to register, and of course you will receive these slides after the meeting, and we'll post them on our website so you can register for those meetings. It is one registration link because it's a recurring meeting. So if you register once, you're going to get the invite for both office hours. We have those RFP materials posted on our website. So if there are things like amendments or additional materials, we will be posting things like FAQs, the slides for this presentation. It'll all be on that page. If you mosey over to DCD's website, there should be a spot to refer you over to this page. So we're going to try to keep it really centralized so you all don't have to hunt down 3 different websites to get all the information you need. If you have questions, please email those questions to homeless program singular, not programs, at cchealth.org. Thank you, Shelby, for putting that in the chat. Please do this by November 6th at 5 p.m. So that we're able to consolidate questions and post them online, and everybody can have access to the frequently asked questions document. Jim, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I do. Good morning. Hey, thank you for taking me. I just have a general question. We've received funding the last 2 years, but it hasn't come from Measure X, is my understanding. We've applied under Measure X, so we have these existing programs. How do I get those into this particular process? I'm looking at page 2 of the application. Are they renewals? It's not Measure X funding.
Right.
So that's where I'm struggling.
Yeah, so there is a portion of your funds that are Measure X, and so I would categorize the program as a renewal program, and we'll do our best to kind of map that to the available funding sources if it's being categorized as a renewal project.
So that's it. That I have an existing one. I want to continue. That would be a renewal checkbox. If I want to propose something entirely brand new, let's say we proposed something last year and didn't get funded for it. If we want to resubmit, then that would be also checkbox number 3, which is new homeless response project.
Correct.
And I'm understanding it could be funded by Measure X, or it could be funded by. We're not in AB 109 because we're not in a reentry population. So the only other category for us, if I go down to Exhibit E, looks like the last category, which is rapid rehousing and shallow subsidies. That's possibly where the funding could come from.
Possibly, if that program is supporting the encampment resolution grant. So that those boxes should be very specific in AB 109, coordinated entry, and then services for folks who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness through encampment resolution. So if that is the target population, great. Go ahead and encourage you to do that. But I really want you to be spending the time that you have, the very precious time y'all have, strategically. So if you're looking at the funding availability and you're like, I am proposing a $10 million project, I would really rethink that, because that is not the level of funding we have available in this opportunity. And I don't think that's what you're doing, Jim. I'm just using
I understand that. I think the category we're looking at is that last category, which is the one looks like 1.5 million that talks about shallow subsidies and rapid rehousing. Is that specifically geared to that encampment project? So that's where the population is going to come from?
Yep.
Okay. All right. That's what my program director is wanting to know, and she can't attend the meeting. Andrea, I'm sure she's just attend the meeting this morning.
Great.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Elaine, I see your question about downloading the Exhibit A from our website and getting a blank Word document. We did some troubleshooting, and you should now be able to download the Exhibit A fully. What I experienced is that I needed to open a private browser and clear my cookies or clear my cache before it regenerated correctly. So that might be something you need to do, is either use a different browser or clear your cookies out of your browser so it'll download correctly. Any additional questions? This is our last slide, so I will open up to questions for any part of the presentation or the RFP, and feel free to let me know if you want to go back in the presentation.
Yeah, I think Julie had a question. I don't think you got to that one yet. If we are renewing and expanding our existing program, should we check both renewal and expansion or just expansion?
If it is a renewal project for these funds particularly, and that is standalone, and then you're also proposing an expansion of a different project, then check both. But if it is an expansion of an existing project and the services will be the same, you're just serving more people asking for more funding, then check an expansion. Thanks, Shelby, for flagging that. And Michelle asked, 2 of the funding sources on page 13 state one-time funding, but also say renewable. Can you please clarify the expected grant terms for these funds? So it is one-time funding. For example, our encampment resolution grant is one-time funding, but we expect the funds to last 2 to 3 years, depending on the program component that's being funded. And we say renewable because generally we set contracts up for a 1-year term. Sometimes it can be longer and can be renewed throughout the process of the grant up to the kind of lifespan of the grant, assuming that performance is going well and all of that fun stuff. Does that help clarify, Michelle? Great. All right, well, we are happy to stay on as long as needed for this group. But like I said, that was the last of my slides. And so if there are no questions, we won't keep you hostage. Feel free to drop off as you'd like. But like I said, we'll stick around for as long as there are questions for us.
Hi, Jamie. It's Leslie. You know, I have questions, but I wanted everybody else to get a chance. So I'm going to stick around.
Great. Feel free, because it sounds like the room's pretty quiet right now.
Okay. And I had to step away for just a moment too. Okay. So some of them have been answered, as I imagined, through your presentation. One was that reference to a coordinated entry program, just a single one that needed to apply and compete as a new. And now I understand that's the Mobile Telephone Resource Center, correct? Yes.
Correct.
Okay, great. So anybody else want to jump in before I go on to my next one?
Not seeing any.
Okay, then. So then with respect to the care center, which I know we get the coordinated entry HUD, coordinated entry planning grant funds for that. So continuing to do what we do, that will be a renewal. But if we wanted to add either additional services or hours or whatever, we would put that in as an expansion, yes?
So our care center funds are not included in this RFP. So if you want to expand services, feel free to put forward that request and we'll see if it fits within one of the other funding categories like Measure X. But we renewed, like competitively procured care center funds in either last year or the year before. So the county policy lets us keep renewing those, assuming performance standards are being met.
For the foreseeable future or for several years? Is that what you're
About
saying?
3 years is how often every 3 years we are required to renew funds.
Oh, sweet. Okay, so then anything in addition to what we are already contracted for at the dollars and et cetera, that would be expansion and we would apply through this RFP.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, then some of the other questions I had based on my assumption, and I'm really actually glad it's wrong, that we had to put in through this for renewal of the care center. So some of my questions now go away. So that's good.
Okay, and I'll read the question in the chat. And Gabriel, this is a you one. Is there a scope for legal assistance? Is this to remain housed like unlawful detainers or visa assistance?
Well, and if you go back to that slide, there's two items that are referring to legal assistance. One says tenant legal assistance. That's definitely pertaining to primarily unlawful detainers, but anything related to a tenant that may be in jeopardy of losing their housing due to some sort of legal issue with their landlord. And typically, it's an unlawful detainer, but there could be other legal assistance that may not be directly related to unlawful detainer. Jamie, that bullet for legal assistance, I'm not. That's just in the middle of that slide. I'm not sure if that's just a duplicate or if it's referring to anything else that H3 may be interested for legal assistance services that are not necessarily tenant legal assistance.
Yeah, in the past, for example, one of our capacity building grants went to an organization that provided kind of know your rights types of clinics for folks experiencing homelessness and providers who are working with them. So definitely there is opportunity for folks to provide these services or propose these services through H3 administered programming, but the primary funding of legal and tenant legal assistance will be through the DCD pot of funding. And Barb, I see your question. Can you publish the organizations and funding levels that were initially awarded and who will probably be applying for a renewal fund? I think it was published when the awards were made, but wondering if updates have been made. Yes, we can share that with the materials if we send them out. And those recommendations were approved by the Board of Supervisors. I think it was June 26th. So if you don't want to wait for us to go find that and share that, you can go back and look at the old board materials and see that. Julie, if we have an existing program and plan to serve more households, that is defined as an expansion. If you have an existing program that is funded by H3 or DCD and are proposing to provide services to more households, that is an expansion. If you have an existing program that is not funded by H3 or DCD, that will be considered a new program in this RFP opportunity. And was that clear as an explanation for folks? Great. Chantal, I see your hand.
Okay, I'm sorry, my voice is all scratchy. Quick question. So the Measure X funds, like for example, we have a home that has not been funded previously, but I get people that call me from winter nights that don't have funding. And I wanted to see if these Measure X funds, because some of those folks, I want to give them a bed, but I don't have the funding. So this application be considered new, and then I'd be able to get the funding to be able to take those people in?
You'd be able to apply for the funding, yes. It'd be considered a new program. You could also work with Winter Nights if they wanted to apply jointly. We really encourage partnerships here. So definitely, yes, if you're previously unfunded, this will be your first time getting funded by H3 or DCD. That would be a new program.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, like I said, feel free to drop off as you would like. As long as there's still questions, we'll be hanging out, but I think the room's getting pretty quiet.
Jamie, I got another question here, but I don't want to cut anyone in line, if I may.
Go for it, Nicholas, and then I'll get to Erica's question in the chat and Leslie's question.
Sure. Maybe this is just a technical problem on my end and I'm not getting something right here, but I'm trying to open Exhibit A from the email that went out. But it's trying to open up a Word file, but I'm not able to get it to, like, when I open it up, it's just like a blank page.
Yep. We had to troubleshoot that a little bit. So don't use the link that was in the email. Go to
Okay.
our website page. Like I said, you might have to open a new browser, a different browser than you usually do, or clear your cookies, but it should then generate
Okay.
a Word document that is filled out.
Okay. All right, I'll track that down. Thank you.
And Shelby put the link in the chat for you to be able to just click on it.
Okay, thank you very much.
And then Erica asked, can you provide an example of what programming for transition-aged youth might look like? Sure, that could be anything with the demonstrated housing connection. So it can be supportive services, housing navigation, transitional housing. If your program has kind of meets the priority areas that are listed in the RFP and has that focus with transition-aged youth, that is just a priority of our system, because we know that young folks experiencing homelessness don't have a robust set of services, or as robust a set of services as needed.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. And Leslie, your hand's up.
Yeah, thank you. My question is about AB 109, but following up on the TAY question. So if a TAY focused project was proposed through this and didn't end up funded potentially, might it be then something that could move forward as we hopefully, cross our fingers and toes, get the YHDP money? Like the notion, the idea could potentially in the future move forward through that process, question mark?
Yes, so for folks who might not be aware, Contra Costa applied for the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program offered through HUD. And that is a very, very competitive process that would really enable us to do a comprehensive community plan and fund youth services much more robustly than we ever have been able to before. We should find out this month, cross everybody's fingers, whether or not we will receive that funding. And so I definitely encourage, if that is an area of interest for your organization, to really think about what sort of services you see missing in the county, and to look at our various presentations at past council on homelessness meetings about this topic. And so to answer your question, Leslie, yes, that could be something that, the idea of the program could move forward in future funding opportunities for transition-aged youth. However, it's unlikely that we'd be able to kind of pull it forward wholesale. You'd likely need to be able to make tweaks and edits and resubmit as future funding opportunities come up.
Sure, of course, absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, so with respect to AB 109, and I haven't kept my finger on the pulse of AB 109, I'll admit that. I know AB 109 had been largely handled by one nonprofit, and then it shifted to another nonprofit. So these funds are in addition to what's already existing, and because it's coming from a one-time allocation through the CAB process?
That is correct. Yes.
And so is the thought that they'll sort of sit next to, or enhance, or be instead of, or in addition to the existing universe of services for AB 109?
Yeah, it's really meant to enhance existing services, and that could mean being provided by the same agency or a new agency, depending on kind of what applications we receive, right? So it is not renewing existing services. It is in addition to, through the new funding awarded from the CAP.
Okay, all right. And are the criteria of who would be eligible for AB 109 pretty much the same as they have been in past years, or might that have changed significantly?
I believe we're going a little bit broader. Previously, some programs that are funded by AB 109 have really focused on AB 109 folks who are on probation. And so I think the intention of our partners at Probation ORJ is to go a little bit broader and hit the reentry population that qualifies under AB 109 more holistically. So not just folks who are currently on probation, but of course we'll work with our partners on referrals and eligibility and all of that as we navigate all this.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And Julie, I'll get you in just one second, but Nell left a question about, the organization provides services for individuals in housing programs, but they get the referrals from other service agencies. They're not interacting with clients directly. Do we have to participate in HMIS or coordinated entry? And so HMIS and coordinated entry are not required for capacity building projects, but they are required for homelessness response programs. in general. DCD's set of funding is a little bit different. So Julie, I'll get your question in the chat and then I'll let you come off mute real quick. The question around how are you going to be able to apply for program support if we receive YHDP? And did we already need to be a collaborative partner? We'll be able to share more details on that process as we learn more about YHDP. We haven't fully kind of sketched out that process. So I'm not able to give an answer today. So let me know if you have additional questions to add.
Do you just have a sense of timing as to when you'll know about the YHDP funding? The reason I'm asking is we serve both Alameda and Contra Costa counties, and we were not able to participate in the Alameda County process because it's already passed, I guess, for this set of funding.
Yeah, so we should find out this month if HUD is able to keep to their timelines, whether or not we've been awarded. After an award announcement, you generally get 6 months or so to, as a community, put together a plan that will basically put forward kind of your strategies for ending and reducing homelessness for youth and young adults. So we'll be definitely sharing information as that process unravels itself, and really encourage folks who are interested to sign up for our newsletter. I think we have a youth-specific mailing list, and I think Shelby could possibly put that link in the chat to stay updated on that.
Thanks.
You're welcome. And Nicholas.
I was just, so I'm very new with my organization. So I was wondering, is it possible to get copies of like prior materials that my organization had sent in and responses to them to kind of like unwind what we had done in the past and figure things out for going forward?
Sure. What organization are you with, Nicholas?
I'm with Hope Solutions.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if y'all need a copy of anything, feel free to reach out. But I'm guessing other folks in the organization might be able to share those as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. If the new expansion funds do end up increasing to higher than 63,000, will that information be published, or would it all be announced once orgs are selected for funding? I think it's more likely that it'll be announced once orgs are selected for funding, because we won't quite know if new funds through Measure X will be available unless we proactively hear from any of our current grantees, or unless we proactively hear from them that, hey, we're not going to be doing this anymore. And again, one of our priorities here is really to make sure that our grantees who are providing high-performing services and helping folks get housed are able to sustain those services. That was definitely one of the biggest pieces of feedback we've heard over the past 3 years of, it's really hard out there for nonprofits to constantly be scrimping and hustling after new dollars, and sustainable funding is one of the best ways for our participants to succeed.
Deanne with Hope Solutions. Can we find out separately exactly which of our existing contracts are being renewed here? It is always a bit confusing for us.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
And that is an open offer to anybody who's an existing grantee with H3 or DCD. If you're not sure if your funding is getting renewed here, or if it's, in kind of a different cycle, feel free to reach out and we'll confirm. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. That's easier for me to see the chat and any hands up. But feel free to let me know if you want to go back to the PowerPoint for any specific slides. Is there any guidance on conforming to COC models and program design? I'm new and have not reviewed that document yet. Just all of it is spelled out in our COC performance standards and program models. So that'll be the guidance for things that are funded directly through the continuum of care. It all kind of, encompassing our COC standards and HUD COC standards. So that's one component there. But for the most part, we're looking to make sure that things are low barrier, trauma informed, really prioritizing getting folks into housing with a housing first focus. But all of the details are pretty spelled out. And for folks waiting on additional questions to be asked, I'll turn around on you and ask, how did this session go? Any feedback? Happy to hear if you are looking for any specific additional information, or feel free to email that as well if you think of something after the session. I'll take advantage of having y'all in the audience still. Feel free to give a thumbs up, thumbs down, any of the things that might be helpful for us in improving. Leslie.
Yep. So I would say this has been helpful. It also helped that I read the whole thing thoroughly before this session. So, but what I'm surprised by, and wearing my Council on Homelessness hat, a little worried about, is I'm still not seeing a whole lot of new players or small organizations, unless you all, knowing who all the rest of those players are seeing that. But I'm still not seeing, some of the broadness that we'd like to see in the mix. So, but that's with my COH hat. So
yeah, I appreciate that. This was not a mandatory information session. So we know folks are very busy and don't have a lot of time to join every meeting that they're invited to. But I will say in the past 2 years, there has been a lot of really helpful applications to give us kind of insight on who it is that is looking for these types of funds. So we've been able to make sure that those folks are being informed of this opportunity, are added to our funding list, and I'm hopeful that they're still interested in applying. And that's kind of the nice thing about our one-time capacity building funds, that every year those new organizations have a chance to apply and get their bite at the apple. And then Julie, just for the good of the group, asked, is there a lead agency for the COC? Shelby replied, yes, that is Contra Costa Health, Housing, and Home Services. That's the agency she and I both work for. And our Council on Homelessness is our COC governing board. Thank you, Lene. And Jim, I saw your thumbs up earlier. Appreciate that. Thanks, Julie. As a reminder, we'll have office hours, 2 office hours available for you as you are working through your applications. Feel free to join those when you're able to. Again, you don't have to stay for the full 2 hours. We will, but you don't have to. And feel free to email your questions by November 6th to the homelessprogram@cchealth.org email. I'll send these materials out to everybody who attended and registered so that you can have them as reference, and we'll post the recording as well in case there was any question that cropped up that you want to revisit. And I'm seeing folks drop off. Again, once we see that departure, we'll probably end this meeting early. All right, last call, Sarah, Carmela, Nicholas.
Good, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, I will stop.